Conversation with the Candidate continues.
Thank you for clicking on our extended digital conversation with the candidate. We actually had a cliffhanger at the end of the TV portion of this. Congressman Seth Moulton had just undergone surgery as a veteran, and he was explaining what had happened after he had been prescribed some pills by the VA. So, Congressman, sorry for interrupting you at the end of the TV broadcast.
Not at all.
Take it from there.
It's great to be back. Yeah. Thank you. So I had the pills, and I took one of them, and it didn't seem to make a difference. So I went back to have a second, and I looked at the bottle. And I realized that although they had prescribed me a powerful painkiller, they sent me home with Advil. By that point, they had even figured out that I was a member of Congress getting surgery at the VA, and they still couldn't manage to send me home with the right medicines. So if that's the treatment that a member of Congress is getting, think about the treatment for other veterans. We've got to fix the VA. We've got to fix the VA. And here's another thing about this. I think I'm the only candidate in this race who gets single-payer health care because I go to the VA. And that's why I don't like the idea of forcing everybody onto a single-payer plan if you have a private plan that you actually like. Now, many of the other candidates are saying that that's what they would do, but I don't think that's right because I get single-payer health care and it isn't perfect. So we gotta work to fix the VA. We've got to make this better for veterans. But we should also learn some lessons about the VA when it comes to designing a health care plan that will give everybody access to affordable health care in America.
And following up on that quickly, some of your fellow Marines have also had issues. Describe what you've heard from fellow platoon members.
I'll tell a story that's kind of hard to tell, but I've lost 2 Marines from my 2nd platoon since we've been back. And the second was, they're both heroes. The second was a real hero in Najaf when we were there. His name was James Hassel from Alabama. And when another kid from Vermont, actually, from St. Johnsbury, was hit by a grenade in a building that we were in, James put him on his back and carried him out through withering machine gun fire to safety. Saved his life. Now, when James got back from the war, he wanted to find that same sense of purpose in his work back here at home. So he went to nursing school so that he could work in an ER and save lives every single day. And he did. And he did well in school, and he got a good job. But look, he'd been through a lot. I mean, just the story I told you is a lot. And so he went to the VA to get counseling. But instead of giving him a counselor to talk to, the VA just prescribed him drugs. And this is a story I've heard from so many veterans because the VA doesn't have enough mental health care professionals. They just send veterans home with prescriptions. And at the age of 30, James died of a heart attack just from taking the drugs prescribed to him by the VA. The first time that his father got on a plane in his entire life was to go to his son's funeral. James is an American hero. He's such a hero that doing what he did in Iraq wasn't enough. He came home and wanted to save lives every single day. He's the best of America, and we completely let him down. So we got to fix this. And I guarantee you, if I'm the next president, we're going to put an end to stories like James's.
Next question comes from Dan Bergeron. Such an emotional story. I almost forgot Dan's name. Holy cow.
How do I follow that? But, thank you once again for your distinguished service and that of James as well. I asked this question as a school board member in Manchester. We're the largest public school district in the state. So what would an education funding look like in a Moulton administration? And if you could sort of tie that to local districts here in New Hampshire and I guess nationwide. So
Great question. So we clearly need to invest a lot more in education. It's the single best investment we can make in the future of the country. And we're literally investing in the future of the country when we invest in education. But I think where I differ from some other Democrats is I don't want to just continue funding the system exactly as it is. Why? Because the world is changing. The economy is changing. And we've got to evolve our education system to meet it. When we had the Industrial Revolution over 100 years ago, we changed our education system. That's the first time we created universal high school. We said everybody's going, we're not on farms anymore, kids are in factories, we're going to get universal high school to educate our American workforce for this new industrial age. Well, now we're going through another revolution. It's not the Industrial Revolution, but the automation revolution. We're not losing our jobs to immigrants like the president says. We're losing them to robots. Jobs are getting automated out of existence. And we've got to change our education system to meet that demand. What does that mean? We need to invest much more in vocational school. You know, we have a new vocational school in my district of Massachusetts, and there are literally lines out the door. Kids are getting great jobs when they come out of vocational school, but we've got to make sure that every kid has the opportunity to go to vocational school if he or she wants to. And on top of that, we've got to make sure that when they come out of vocational school, they are respected for these important jobs. Who's tried to get a plumber lately? Plumbers are making really good money, and they're doing really good work, and they should be respected for that work. If you want to be a plumber, you should get just as much respect as if you want to be a computer programmer. We got to make sure our education system is meeting the demand for these jobs, and it's clearly not. Otherwise, it'd be a lot easier to get a plumber. So that's one of the changes that we need to make to evolve our education system to meet this new automated age. I would love for everybody to be able to go to college for free in America. That's a great goal. It's extremely expensive, but it's a great goal. But let's start with just making sure that kids get the education they need in high school. Free college is great for everybody who gets to college, but a quarter, 1 out of every 4 kids in America doesn't even graduate high school today. Let's start with them. Let's make sure that everybody gets a good high school education, to go into a good career whether you want to go to college or not, and then we can talk about free college.
Very well. Thank you.
Thanks.
Dan, thanks so much. Another social media question coming here. This from Richard Fulford. How will the proposals of gun control actually stop criminals from owning and obtaining guns?
Well, actually, there's very clear evidence that it works. And I know this is an argument from gun rights advocates that say, well, you know, if you just take away guns from law-abiding citizens, then criminals are still going to get guns. But there is a very clear correlation between states that have tougher gun laws and less gun violence. And I know that coming from Massachusetts, where we have some of the toughest gun laws in the country and the lowest incidence of gun violence. So the fact of the matter is that, yes, I mean, you can always find exceptions to the rule, but tougher gun laws help. And as someone who's actually had to use guns, someone who carried guns every single day for 3 years, someone who can say that guns actually saved my life, I understand how you talk about guns. And I am going to be a tough advocate for reasonable, rational gun reform in America. Now, this doesn't mean taking away guns from hunters up in New Hampshire. It doesn't mean taking away the Second Amendment. But it does mean doing basic things like saying, if you buy a gun at a gun show, just like if you buy it at a gun shop, you ought to have a background check. In the last Congress, I had the 2 most bipartisan bills on gun reform. One was to ban bump stocks, which would have lessened the massacre in Las Vegas. The NRA has already banned bump stocks from their own headquarters, folks, okay? Like, this is not too radical. Now, my second gun bill, I admit, was more controversial. It was to prevent terrorists from getting guns. This is simple stuff. This is reasonable stuff. These are things that the vast majority of Republicans and Democrats across the country agree on. It's a good example of why Congress is broken if we can't pass things that 85, 95% of America agrees on. That's the kind of gun reform that we need, and that's the kind of gun reform I will push as the next president.
Before we get to Joan, one quick follow there. Can you settle a point of contention right now in this debate? Democrats often speak of weapons of war on the American streets. You've handled weapons of war. Is it intellectually honest to say that the kind of guns you were carrying in Iraq are widely available in the United States?
Yes, absolutely, because they are. I carried an M4 in Iraq. It is basically it is basically the same rifle that was used in all these massacres across the country. Now, technically, there are military-style weapons that can go on full auto, and the civilian versions can't. But you know what? You can modify that with a simple kit. And on top of that, one of the things, if you really want to get into it, that you learn in the Marines is it's more effective not to put your weapon on full auto. So the point is, with all this gun jargon aside, the point is that the weapons are essentially identical. And if you need an assault rifle to kill a deer, you need to go to shooting school, okay? You need to go to marksman school. You don't need an assault rifle to kill a deer. These are weapons of war. We shouldn't have them on our streets. And by the way, we outlaw all kinds of other weapons of war. I not only had a pistol and a rifle with me every single day in Iraq, I had 2 grenades on my chest. Every single day for 3 years, I walked around with 2 grenades. And I knew how to handle them. I never blew myself up. Now, how would you feel if I had 2 grenades just hanging out here tonight? Probably not that great, right? We've made a decision as Americans that we don't need people walking around with grenades, even if they prove that they're pretty safe with them. Those are weapons of war that we say they don't have a place here at home. Grenades are great for fishing, but we don't allow grenades for fishing, okay? So this is a totally reasonable thing to say that assault rifles, which are weapons of war as well, don't belong on our streets. 30-round magazines don't belong at home in America.
Next question comes from Joan Krimlisk.
Okay,
Sorry to keep you hanging there for so long.
welcome.
I get very carried away about this stuff because, I mean, it is heartbreaking to go to high schools and have kids come up to you and say, I'm scared to go to school. I want to learn, I'm a good student, but I'm literally scared to show up at school because I think I might get shot. And that is happening in high schools across the country today.
Okay, this is a different topic. How would you accomplish your goals for clean and renewable energy?
Great question. So I was one of the first signers on to the Green New Deal, but I signed on as a framework because I think this is important that we address climate change. But here's my rule. We address climate change while growing the economy. It shouldn't cost jobs, it shouldn't break the bank to address climate change. Because we should be the leaders on green jobs. Why are we buying all our solar panels from China right now? You know, why is China becoming the world leader on green tech? We should be the leader on green tech. One of the first things I would do is I would start a national service program along the model of the program that Roosevelt had under the New Deal, where he had the Civilian Conservation Corps. We need a modern Green Corps that, rather than fix our national parks, although that's good and important work too, can go around and weatherize buildings, can make buildings more efficient, can help us save energy, can make coastlines more resilient, can help us deal with the immediate effects of climate change while giving young people an opportunity to serve their country. You know, we met the challenge of the 1930s with the Civilian Conservation Corps. We should meet the challenges of today by expanding national service with a Green Corps that will help kids get jobs. Investing in national service is a great example of an investment that improves our economy. You get more return than you spend. Those are the kinds of investments we need to make to meet the challenges of climate change. I want to make sure that my daughter has a planet without an expiration date to grow up in. Thanks.
Thank you, Joan. A social media question here from Russ Holmes. He asks, are you in favor of giving tax credits to companies who wish to invest in solar carports with provisions to plug in electric vehicles? I think it would be a huge catalyst for promoting EVs.
Well, as the owner of an EV, I own a Chevy Volt. My wife and I do. We only have one car, but it's a Chevy Volt. I think that sounds great. But the biggest thing we need to do is just make sure that regardless of whatever investment you're making to make this country a little bit greener, a little bit less carbon dependent, that it's favored by our tax code, that you get incentivized to make those investments. You know, this is why we should have a tax on carbon. Now, a carbon tax is controversial. People don't like the idea of raising taxes. But done right, you can just incentivize people to spend money on things that actually are helpful for the environment. And that's exactly the kind of economic policy we should have. So whether or not, I mean, this is a very, very specific, it's so specific I don't remember the exact details, carports, solar, but...
Tax breaks for carports so you can charge your car off of.
So I think that sounds great, but we need to think bigger. We need to make sure that any kind of investments that we make to improve our economy, but also make it a more green economy, are incentivized by our tax system. Right now, our tax system gives tax breaks to oil companies. It gives tax breaks to gas companies. It gives tax breaks to companies that are literally making our environment worse. We need to flip that around.
Next question comes from Jeannie Tucker of Concord.
Hey, Jeannie, how are
Good
you?
evening, Congressman. More than 173,000 Granite Staters care for older parents, spouses, children and adults with disabilities, and other loved ones, helping them live independently and in their homes and communities where they want to be. These family caregivers are the backbone of America's care system, yet they can continue to face physical, emotional, and financial challenges and deserve better support. If elected, will you support this army of family caregivers, and if so, how?
Absolutely yes. So let me talk about how. First of all, let me share a little personal experience with this. My Uncle Andy had Down syndrome. When he was born in 1968, the doctors told my grandparents that he should go straight to an institution. They shouldn't even take him home. My grandparents said, no, we're going to take him home with his 6 brothers and sisters, one of whom was my mom, and make him a part of our family. And what I learned from growing up in a family with an uncle who had Down syndrome is that he immeasurably enriched our lives. It wasn't a burden to take care of him, although it was a lot of work for my grandmother and my grandfather while they were alive. But much more than that, he contributed to our lives. He made us better. And when he died, sadly, a few years ago, the church in Longmeadow, Massachusetts was overflowing with literally hundreds of friends that we didn't even know that he knew. He enriched this entire community. He was a bagger at Stop and Shop, and he just basically knew everybody. So these are wonderful people who contribute so much to our community. He was also the first intellectually disabled person to graduate from Longmeadow High School with a high school degree. So we need to support them, but I will say it was a lot of work for my grandmother and my grandfather, who were his caretakers throughout his life. Now, when they died, he went to a group home, and he had a wonderful life at his group home for the next 5 or 10 years. And we saw the work that the folks at the group home did to take care of my Uncle Andy and his friends. So there are a lot of people doing this work throughout the country. But let me share a shocking statistic. And this is actually an example of not just the sort of economic disparities in our system right now, but the gender disparities, because a lot of caregivers tend to be women. Male parking attendants get paid more per hour to watch cars than child care workers on average get paid to watch children. Now, where are those priorities? Where are those priorities? So we've got to invest. We've got to invest in family caregivers. We've got to give tax incentives to make sure that they can do their jobs. We've got to provide programs to support their work, the kind of social work programs that supported my Uncle Andrew and his group home. And there's probably more that we need to do too. So I don't have all the answers, but I hope what I've conveyed to you is how important this is, and how I think backwards the system is right now in terms of the respect and the basic pay that we give to people who do this work.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jeannie. Another social media question coming in here from Benjamin Pelletier. He asks, do you support reform to our immigration system? If so, what would that look like in a Moulton administration?
Absolutely, we need to reform our immigration system. One of the things I did over the last 2 years is I went around the country supporting Democrats running in tough districts to take back the House, especially veterans. And of the 40 seats that we flipped to take back the House of Representatives, 21 of them, 21 out of 40, were endorsed and supported by my Serve America organization. And one of the things that I did with these veterans, not just supporting their campaigns, but really helping them, mentoring them and whatnot, is we took a bunch of them down to the border to understand the border crisis. Now, a bunch of congressional delegations went down to the border, and they usually do 5 hours in a press conference. We spent 2 days, and we spent 2 days on both sides of the border. We spent time in Juarez, Mexico, with a home full of deported veterans. Think about that, deported veterans. That's a term that should not even exist. We talked to a United States Navy sailor who'd worked for 10 years, proudly, in the United States Navy. His parents are American citizens. His kids were American citizens. But he came to the United States when he was 16 years old, and he just didn't get around to doing the paperwork while he was in the Navy. He admits it was a mistake. I mean, he should have just filled out the paperwork, but he just didn't get around to doing it. Now, he got out. He had a little bit of a drinking problem, and he got a DUI. He'll be the first to tell you that he should not have gotten a DUI. But he did his time, and then when he was let out of prison, he was sent to a country that he never knew. A proud U.S. Navy veteran who has a DUI like a lot of my colleagues in Congress, many of whom haven't served the country. And he's now stranded away from his entire family in Juarez, Mexico. That's an example of just how broken the system is. So when you go down there and you talk to people seeking asylum, when you talk to Customs and Border officials, when you talk to illegal immigrants, when you talk to legal immigrants, when you talk to ICE officials even, everybody says the system is broken. There's no one who says, oh, we just need to enforce existing laws, like we hear from some members of Congress. Everyone tells you the system is fundamentally broken. This Commander-in-Chief, Trump, is making it worse. He just pulled out aid from Central America, where a lot of these migrants are coming from. Do we have an issue with historic numbers of migrants from Central American countries coming to the southern border? Yes, we do. And we should be able to admit that as Democrats. But the plan to stop it is to send aid to the countries that are so lawless these people are fleeing for their lives. And we've done this before. We did it in Colombia. Plan Colombia, in the space of 15 years, turned a narco state into a tourist destination. Americans now go to Colombia for vacation. That's because we had effective foreign aid investments in Colombia, and we need to do the same in Central America. Trump is doing the exact opposite. This is a great example of where our national security affects our homeland security, affects an issue that everybody is talking about in politics right now. So we need to bring the country together, Democrats and Republicans, admit that yes, a country has borders and we need to have a strong border, and we need to staunch this migrant flow by actually investing in these Central American countries just like we did in Colombia. We also need to have a pathway to citizenship for dreamers, supported by over 80% of Americans, Democrats and Republicans alike. A pathway to citizenship for people who are part of our economy, part of our communities. People like that deported veteran who didn't get his paperwork done when he was in the Navy, but should have just had an opportunity to get it done after he got out. This is common sense, reasonable reform that the majority of America agrees with, and that's what I would pursue as president.
Next question comes from Leonard Morrill.
How are you?
Very good.
Good to see you.
Thank you. The American people are looking for better paying jobs, better health care, lower prescription drug costs, less expensive education, and better retirement security. Is there any chance that Congress will address these issues under your administration?
Well, I'm going to make sure we address these issues. And part of the advantage of having a little bit of experience in Congress is knowing a little bit about how Congress works and how you can bring Democrats and Republicans together, just as I've done to pass bipartisan bills. I was named the most effective freshman Democrat because I actually got things done. And I'd take that same spirit of getting things done to the White House. That means you have to work with both sides of the aisle. Now, it doesn't mean you work with every Republican. I mean, there are some Republicans who, someone said to me once, how do you work with Ted Cruz? And here's the answer. You don't work with Ted Cruz. You find a Republican who's easy to work with, okay? You got to work with Republicans, though, to get some of these things done. And to get them done in a bipartisan way so that they'll actually be fixed for the long term and they won't just be repealed when power switches hands. So that spirit of getting things done that I've exercised in Congress will be exactly the same spirit of leadership that I bring to the White House. It means making some compromises sometimes, never compromising our values, but saying to the American people, it's more important to get things done for you than to win this political fight in Washington.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next question is from social media. It comes from Bob Healy. He says, I'm tired of hearing that wasteful spending and congressional pet projects are a drop in the bucket of the federal budget. They all add up. What are we going to do to eliminate these foolish and unnecessary projects? And what are your plans to actually reduce the $22 trillion budget deficit?
Well, first of all, let's just be clear. We have the largest budget deficit in American history under President Trump. The largest deficit in American history. For too long, Republicans have said, oh, we're the party of fiscal responsibility. Nope. We need to take back the mantle of leadership on the economy as Democrats. We need to say, we can run the economy too. We know how to balance a checkbook, and we know how to reduce the federal deficit. Actually, if you look at a chart, I don't have one here tonight, but consistently over time, the deficit has gone down under Democratic presidents, and it's gone up under Republican presidents. So we're going to end this idea that Republicans are the party of fiscal responsibility because it's Democrats that have been fiscally responsible. The thing that's given us, the single thing, more than anything else, that's given us the biggest deficit in American history is Trump's tax cut that largely went to corporations and the rich. One of the first things I would do is rescind that tax cut. I want to make taxes fair. That means that if you're making money off investments, you're paying the same rates as people who are making money off of hard work every single day. That's not the case in today's economy, right? This is why Warren Buffett famously says he pays lower taxes than his secretary. Okay, that's wrong. I agree with Warren Buffett. The rates should be fair and simple so that everybody pays their fair share. That will do a lot to reduce the federal budget deficit. Now, with regards to pet projects in Congress, I agree. We shouldn't have pet projects in Congress. And although they are a small part of the budget, they do add up. Sure, that's a good point. But just ending those projects is not going to do as much to reduce the deficit as the plan that I just outlined to make the tax system more fair.
We got time for about one more question here. You've had so many compelling stories of your service. I'm just curious, when you think of the Battle of Najaf, what is the image that comes to your mind?
You know, I try to tell stories about my service because I wouldn't be here without that experience, and because I want people to know about the incredible sacrifices that are made by our men and women in uniform. I don't like to tell war stories, though. So there's a lot of parts of Najaf that, you know, just kind of remain in here, and I'm not going to share. But there's a picture in my office of a bunch of my Marines on the front page of the New York Times in early August 2004. And when you look into their eyes, I think you see the best of America. Even in the midst of a war that many of us disagreed with, not all of us, but many of us disagreed with, they were making a difference every single day. They were there to make an imperfect war better. They were there fighting for our country and our freedom so that their friends and family didn't have to go in their places. And when you look into their eyes, you see how unbelievably young they are. I'm going to talk a lot about patriotism in this campaign, what patriotism really means. I'm going to talk about strengthening our national security and taking on Donald Trump as commander-in-chief in the job he's doing. But most of all, this will be a campaign anchored in the idea, the principle of service, of believing in America so much that you want to serve this country and make it better. I was inspired by the young Marines that I served with in Najaf and elsewhere in Iraq to run for Congress, to try to prevent what got us into Iraq from happening again. There was a day in 2004 in Najaf when a young Marine in my platoon said, "You know, sir, you ought to run for Congress someday so that this stuff doesn't happen again." Now, he used a Marine term for stuff, but you get what I mean. I saw a lot of bad things in Iraq, but the image that I remember is the image of those young Marines serving their country, making this country a little bit better, being proud patriots, proud of their country even in the midst of an uncertain time. And so for all the tragedy of Iraq, the image that I have is one of inspiration from these young Marines serving their country.
Congressman Seth Moulton, thank
Thanks.
you for joining us for a conversation with the candidate. We appreciate your time. Next week, we're going to have Julian Castro here, the former HUD secretary. You can watch that again next Thursday. But until then, we thank you, the audience. We thank you, Congressman Moulton, and thanks to you watching at home. Have a great evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you.